Hello everyone, how are you guys doing today? Hope you're all having a great day. So like how I said in my previous video, a lot of new information of various film and film franchises dropped over at CinemaCon last week. And yes, I know I'm very late for this. Look guys, working 2 jobs on top of trying to become a voice actor, as well as the little time I have for myself, it can be hard to get these videos out in time. And I don't want to seem like I'm complaining, but I'd appreciate it if you guys liked, subscribed, and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on new videos. Also, thanks to everyone who's supporting the voice acting shorts. I seriously appreciate the kind words. Becoming a voice actor has been my wish since I was younger, so hopefully by the grace of God, it becomes a reality. But with that out of the way, excuse my rambling, let's talk about the new information surrounding the John Wick franchise, as a ton of information about the 4 main projects coming out of the new John Wick cinematic universe has just dropped, and I'm excited to go over it with you guys. Just like the Spider-Verse films I talked about in the last video, I'm a huge fan of the John Wick films. If James Bond is the Beatles, John Wick is most definitely Metallica or somewhere around those lines. They ooze with a style and a mojo that is the complete opposite of similar action franchises like James Bond. While Bond should preferably have a sense of elegance to his brutality, John Wick cuts straight to the bone. And although there's not much story in these films, I think what makes them better than other blockbusters, where people like to use the defense that, oh, it doesn't need to be a 10 out of 10, it's just a movie you can go to turn your brain off. Which I think is a stupid defense, might I add. But it's the grandiloquence of these films. Despite also having a significant amount of CGI as the modern MCU films, these movies never feel fake. There are only a handful of scenes in all 4 of the films where I could tell that the actors were in front of a green screen. Everything from the stunts to choreography to the fact that Keanu Reeves did 90% of his own stunts at 49 years old at the start of the first movie is just insane to me. But with Chapter 4 being arguably the best in the entire series, it also fits as a perfect conclusion to John Wick's storyline. But of course, no movie studio is going to let one of the most profitable action franchises to end it definitively. And like I mentioned before, we got a bunch of news surrounding 4 upcoming John Wick projects. So without further ado, let's start. So let's start off with Ballerina, the Ana de Armas-led spin-off film that will take place in between chapters 3 and 4, and it'll be released on June 6th later this year, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing it. It'll also include Norman Reedus in the cast, and also Keanu Reeves and Ian McShane to reprise their roles as Wick and Winston Scott respectively. I can only hope that McShane can do a proper American accent this time around. It'll also include the late Lance Reddick as Charon, in what is presumably his final performance. May he rest in peace. But in terms of what was dropped at CinemaCon, those who were lucky enough to attend got to see an extended look of the film and got to see Ana de Armas in John Rambo-like action. Well, I guess that's not really a good term to use since people have said that she's very fluid in her action sequences, with many saying that she does fit very well into this universe, with it also being revealed that John Wick has been hired to take Ana de Armas' character out, making him her surrogate bad guy. With John Wick reportedly giving her a chance to give up, which she obviously declines, it also seems that although John Wick will still play a relatively small role compared to Eve, Ana de Armas' character, it seems that he will play a much bigger role than people initially thought, with being one of, if not the driving force against Ana de Armas. All I really want from this movie is more of the typical John Wick action. I don't expect anything less from that. I'm pretty sure they will deliver on that front since the trailers look very promising. But the main thing I hope from this film is that it doesn't rely too much on the pre-existing films to get people either excited or even to justify its existence. Look, I get it, it's a spin-off film. It's going to have nods and references to the previous films, but I also want this movie to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. I don't want it to rely too heavily on Wick. I don't want unnecessary callbacks in the form of recreating iconic moments and or shots, memorable quips from the previous films, similar plots, and especially down to the character. This is Eve, not John Wick, so this is a chance to make something new that feels like it's from this world, but doesn't feel like a carbon copy of already existing material because they're too scared to make something new. I also would prefer if Eve wasn't directly related to Wick in any way. I preferably wouldn't want a third act twist where Wick finds out that she's actually his cousin or long lost sister or niece, and that's why he doesn't kill her. As a spin-off, it has the chance to expand the universe, show us a different side of how the High Table works. Maybe as a spin-off with new characters, people have different expectations when coming in. So maybe you can explore the history of the High Table, its mark and or other parts of the world. Maybe you can go above and beyond and have a more dramatic story that explores the life of an assassin in a way that the film about an old jaded one can't. In other words, be like Better Call Saul and not Jurassic World. In other news, it has been now officially confirmed that John Wick 5 is in the works. They finally settled on a story to tell, with Chad Stahelski returning to direct. After many rumors and alleged reports of a fifth film in development, it is now rock solid. That's all we got in terms of news, but I'm mostly curious and concerned about this fifth film than excited. Well, I'm excited because how could I not be? But Chapter 4 is, to me, the ultimate conclusion to a four film saga, and the bar in terms of action films was set quite high in that last movie. In terms of action, it is, in my opinion, the gold standard for action films and how it should be done. So I'm very curious to see how they could match that, let alone top it. On top of Keanu Reeves getting pretty old, it's getting harder and harder for him to perform these stunts, especially now since he's 60. All I hope is that they can stick to their guns and only use CGI when it's most necessary. Now, to clarify, I am not one of those people who will automatically write a movie off if it uses a ton of CGI and green screen. I think people, especially nowadays, overhate the art form and underestimate how hard it is to actually make CGI look good. But with the more it's used, the more it's easier for it to look fake, especially if the artists aren't given enough time to fully flesh it out to look real. And that's part of John Wick's bit, that even with all the extravagant stuff happening, it still feels real. So I can only hope that they can still manage to muster up something as good as at least the second film. My main concern is mainly turned towards Ballerina, in where I just hope it doesn't serve as an appetizer for the main course, that being Chapter 5. I hope it still manages to be its own thing and not be a side dish before the main course. In other news, it's been announced that an animated John Wick prequel movie is officially in the works. Shannon Tindall, who worked on Kubo and the Two Strings, is on board as a director, and it'll explore John Wick's life as an assassin and will follow the Impossible Task storyline, where he was given an impossible task that he had to complete in order to abandon his life as an assassin, with some people saying that we might get to see the famous pencil sequence that was teased in the first two movies. This is the one I'm the most excited about, if anything because I'm always happy to see animation get more recognition, and hopefully will continue to break the boundaries that so many Western studios still have, that animation is just for kids. While that stigma is definitely breaking and the mindset of animation is an art form, not a genre, is becoming more widespread, I'm most excited because we can see a different side of John Wick, or I guess in this case, Jardani Jovanovic, if they choose to go back that far. With the mainline films, we have him as a cold, disheveled assassin, sort of as a lone wolf trying to survive with not much more in terms of character. And it's not really a bad thing. That's the whole point of those movies. I mean, shit, the driving force for the entire series is that the guy is sad because his dog is dead. But with this prequel film, we can see him in a very inexperienced and early part of his life. We can explore how different of a person he was before he and Helen met, and how much her death affected him. We could also see his dynamic with the other assassins and their relation to the High Table, given how in Chapter 3 we see how they all know each other before trying to kill him. They can maybe explore that dynamic on how friendships and partnerships work in their world. On top of knowing where his relationship with Winston started, we can also explore more about his family's history, and it can even go into a more psychological route by exploring what makes an assassin, what drives him, and how he emotionally became John Wick. This series also has an advantage of having John Wick being essentially a legend before the first film begins, so it doesn't have to suffer from the prequel curse where it can't be as grandiose or extravagant as the mainline films. We can explore how John became a legend by showing us some truly amazing animation. When I first heard that this movie was going to be animated, I was like, you know what? That's actually a great idea. Because despite the live action movies being great, there are still limitations to what live action can do. The only limitation that animation has is budget and imagination. When you have enough of that, animation can bring you some of the most creative and extraordinary things to ever be put in a story. The Pencil and Impossible Task story was always designed to only be mentioned in passing, as it is just being seen as a legend to fuel the scope of what John Wick is capable of. As such, I was always glad they never did a flashback to show us that scene, because I probably would have been disappointed. But with this prequel film being animated, it gives me more confidence that they can actually pull showing those scenes off. I'm also very excited to see adult Western animation finally hit the mainstream without it being a hypersexual, raunchy, or sitcom-like of comedy that many adult shows and movies in the West tend to be. Not to say that I don't want more of that, but I'm glad to see that Western animated projects like Invincible and Arcane are getting the spotlight to show the Western world that you don't need certain things to be qualified as mature content. And I can only hope that this will solidify Western animation as an art form and not a genre. We still aren't sure if it'll be 2D or 3D. I wouldn't mind if it was either, but with Chad Stahelski apparently have worked on the anime Lazarus alongside anime legend Shinichiro Watanabe, there's a good chance that this film could be 2D, though it's still not confirmed if Stahelski will be involved with this one. I know some people would prefer it to be 3D to, again, set a new precedent for animation, since a lot of animated projects in the West that have excessive violence and not much sexual content is 2D, while the opposite is true for 3D content in movies. But 2D animation doesn't get the love it deserves in theaters, at least for a wide release unless it's a Ghibli film. And even then, those are getting pretty scarce. Either way, this is one of my most anticipated projects from the John Wick franchise. I also loved Kubo and the Two Strings. It's one of my favorite Leica films. I think it's better than Coraline. Yes, I said it. So if anything, I just know that on a technical level, this movie will certainly deliver. And lastly, they gave us an update on the Donnie Yen solo Kane movie, of which Yen will both star and direct the English language film. It will supposedly have a similar style to a Hong Kong action movie. The movie will begin shooting later this year and will come out the following year. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't have too much knowledge on classic Hong Kong action films. I do know of their significance, but I'm not too aware of the culture surrounding those films, sad to say. That is something I am planning on fixing, so by the time you watch this video, I'd have already seen more than enough. But overall, don't have much to say about that. I'm very excited for this though. Kane was definitely the best part about the fourth film, so it'd be great to see more of him and his backstory if they choose to go down that road. I really hope that both Ballerina and Kane's solo films can both equally expand the world of John Wick in their own separate ways. But most of my concerns with Ballerina basically apply to Kane. Though I am more excited for this film given how, again, Donnie Yen was great in the role and we can hopefully get some Daredevil type of action here. Well, anyways guys, that's basically it in terms of information surrounding the extended John Wick cinematic universe. What do you guys think of all this? Please let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys think. And as always, my friends, have a blessed night. Take care.